How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and today is going to be an update video, and it's going to be a little bit of a sneak peek for you guys because I got my car on the dyno, and this is not the dyno that I went on last time. This is not Cletus McFarland's dyno with his tuner Jeremy. This is actually the dyno of a, now friend, Mr. Erik Cruz. He runs a shop called Vanquish Tuning, and this is his personal dyno and his personal shop. Now, this isn't going to be the video where you see this car doing dyno pulls, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a heads up. Well, you guys can't even see my face. A little bit of a heads up as to what this car should be making at a specific boost pressure. So this is going to be a geeky episode. This is going to be a really sort of engineering explained type episode. Hopefully I do Jason Fenske proud. So this is Erik. He's a really awesome dude that gave me access to his awesome Mustang all-wheel drive dyno. And this is his, I guess his base of operations for his dyno. So Erik has written down something actually before I came here, and he showed me this, and I am not a mathematician. Here is the theoretical power figure that we'd have to hit at 10 PSI. So 10 PSI in the turbo, well, 10 PSI from the twin turbo system is basically wastegate pressure. So we're not adding any pressure on top of that. This is basically what the turbos are going to make. And we came out to 805.88 wheel horsepower. Theoretically, this is with a lot of things sort of assumed.
When tuners look at an engine, they don't necessarily look at an engine as an engine. An engine to us is an air pump. Right. A very, expensive and sophisticated air pump, but it is
also loud. Very loud.
Very, very loud air pump. What makes power is basically how much air you can get through that air pump and add the appropriate amount of fuel to get a specific amount of heat and energy release through that air pump. Mm-hmm. So if you can calculate basically the airflow of the engine and know what the atmospheric conditions are, you can pretty accurately see what kind of power it's going to make. Yeah,
so we have the engine flow rate. We have 305 cubic inches. That's a displacement of the engine. It's an even fire, for those of you that want to know more about the Lamborghini V10. It is not the same thing as the 5.2 Audi V10. That is an uneven fire. The 5.0 sounds more like an F1 car. 305 cubic inches by 8,200 RPM. That is near about redline. My redline is 8,300 RPM, but this is roundabout there. And that's divided by 2. And why is that divided by 2?
An engine cycle is all 4 cycles of an engine: intake, compression, combustion, exhaust.
Yeah, suck, squeeze, bang, blow. Right?
Exactly. So the part of the engine that's actually responsible for that is the cam, and the cam spins at half the speed of the crank. So you take the 8,200 RPM. What you see on your tack is your crank speed.
Revolution. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But the cam is responsible. It denotes the beginning and end of the engine cycle. So that's why we take the RPM and then divide it by 2.
Okay, and then that's divided by 1728. Now, what's 1728?
1728 is just a factor. Is just a conversion factor to convert whatever we get into CFMs.
Okay, so CFM is a measure of airflow.
Yes, cubic feet per minute.
Okay.
So it is a measurement of airflow. So this engine turning at 8,200 RPM. Will move 723.6 cubic feet per minute. That will be the flow.
Yes.
Now that alone, the amount of flow that you move doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make a certain amount of horsepower.
Sure. And that is contingent on the VE being 100%. Now, the VE is volumetric efficiency.
Yes.
And 100% meaning that all the volume in the intake plenum, it is used 100%. Mm-hmm. So with cars like my Lamborghini, they tend to be at or around 100% at redline because they tend to want to push that volumetric efficiency as far up as possible. They want to make more power the more RPM you have. Mm-hmm. Most cars, they don't actually have 100%. At redline, most cars have somewhere between 90, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in like the high 80s or low 90s for most modern high performance engines. Now, yes. My friend Hendo and I, we were kind of going back and forth and wondering what we should guess the VE on this would be. Most passenger cars would be about 90%. If you were to do the math, assuming 90% VE towards the end, then this figure down here ends up dropping almost 100 horse, like to 700.
Yeah, to 700. Yeah.
So, but because it is a Lamborghini. They do tend to tune their cams where you hit your max VE towards the end of the rev range. We're thinking 100% would be a safe bet, but because of the tuned runners, some supercars tend to hit a little better than that, like about 110, 115 VE.
Wow,
that's a guess.
No, this is definitely a guess. But I'm saying, does this change with turbos? Because turbos actually put more volume into the same. It compresses the air.
Okay, so for this part of the equation, this isn't factoring the turbos. The first thing we want to do is figure out how much air this thing would move under its own devices.
Okay, just naturally aspirated.
Yeah.
All right, so then we take that, we have 723.66 CFM, and then we do that times a conversion factor of 0.076.
Well, so basically the 0.076 is under standard atmospheric conditions, which is what dynos correct for. The air density of the air that we have right now is 0.076 pounds of air mass. Air mass is actually what makes the power, not necessarily how like the flow itself. It's the air mass within that flow that makes power. So if you have a colder day, your air mass would be a little bit more. If you're on a hotter day and the air is thinner, your air mass would be a bit less, and therefore you would make a little less power or a little more power when it's colder.
Yeah, but just by this, if you multiply this by this, you get 55 pounds per minute of air mass.
Yeah.
Right?
So yes, exactly. So this engine turning at 8,200 RPM will, under standard atmospheric conditions, will move 55 pounds of air mass per minute. Now, passenger car engines tend to make around 10 horsepower, per pound of air mass moved.
Yeah.
When you start, doing like engine development and actually start making cars more mechanically efficient, mechanically and thermally efficient, this number tends to go up. You can see it on some engines as high as like 10.8, maybe even 11 for somebody that's really, dialing everything in. But since this is a Lamborghini and it's a little bit more, high performance oriented than the most passenger engines, we went ahead and took a guess at that it would make about 10.2 horsepower per pound of air.
Okay, and that comes out to 561 horsepower NA. Now this is theoretical because the engine at the crank was rated at around 520. Well, actually 510, 512 or something.
Now, this 561, this is just basically, this is the amount of power that you could make if you take complete advantage of how much air how much air mass the engine's moving. Now, depending on how you set the ignition timing and whatever, you could dial it back, so for longevity reasons and stuff like that. But there's 561.
And this assumes fuel stability and whatnot, right?
Yeah. Good point. Now, this whole calculation is just basically a calculation to get us in a baseline. This doesn't take into consideration turbo efficiency. This doesn't take into consideration fuel stability.
Yeah, if you have like a 93 premium versus an E85, which is basically like a race gas because it can just handle that much more timing and that much more boost without knocking. It has a knock threshold that's much more robust than something like a pump gas 93 or 91 if you're in California.
Yeah, exactly. So under ideal conditions, you can set the timing for what is optimal, and you can make the power theoretically that we're talking about. But just like we were saying with octane, that's the limiting factor. You may be stopped because the car would want to knock before you get to this point. Okay,
so after that we have our crank horsepower number, and then we start adding boost. So this is NA, and then we put the boost in, which is 10 pounds per square inch. So we have 561 horsepower times 1.69 bar. That is 1.69 bar. That would be the absolute pressure, correct?
Yes, that's absolute. So the boost pressure
is
10 pounds
0.69.
is 0.69.
Right.
But since we're dealing with absolutes, we add 1 atmosphere, the one that we're sitting in, plus the 0.69.
So that would make it 948 horsepower at the crank, basically at the crank.
At the crank.
And then we have wheel horsepower, and this is also assuming a few things. This is assuming 15% drivetrain loss. And who knows? I mean, this is an all-wheel drive car, so sometimes they do have more drivetrain loss, but manuals tend to have less. So 15% I think is within the ballpark, even though we're running 2-wheel drive, so it actually might be a little bit less than this, but it's fine. It'll work for our purposes. So 948.09 times 85% is 805.88. Now, this number might be lower, it might be higher. There's a lot of different factors going on here. We might not have that same VE. We might not have the same air mass. We definitely don't have the same crank horsepower, but there's a lot. But this is a really good sort of primer on how you can tell how much a car should be making given ideal conditions. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit off this number at 10 pounds. So you want to add a little more. You want to make sure that you have good fuel stability. You want to make sure that everything else, you have all your ducks in a row and don't have like a spark plug out or something.
This number right here, the reason why we went with 0.076 is that's the air mass under standard conditions. Now, this dyno will spit out two numbers. It'll spit out a max horsepower number.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'll just show you right now. It's going to spit out a max power number.
Yeah.
And then it's also going to spit out another number with weather correction factor.
Okay.
So that weather correction factor is basically taking into consideration at standard conditions. So
yeah.
If it's just like what you were saying earlier, if the air is too hot, you won't make as much power. If it's colder, you're going to make more. So that's what you're going to see right here. And then this is under standard conditions. This is to make it comparable, like you know, whether we're here in my shop at 7 feet above sea level versus somebody that's in the mountains of Tennessee. Okay. This is to kind of give an apples to apples comparison.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for showing me this. I think this is going to be on its own one video because this is like really good information. I never knew how you could just take a whiteboard and see how much power a car is making. Yeah, thank you very much, man.
No, you're totally correct. This is a measurement of how much car you have.
How much car I have. All right. So hopefully I have enough car right here. So yeah, let's get to the dyno. Thank you very much, Eric. That is really good news. Hopefully the car should make a lot of power. And as you can see, I'm sweaty. It is hot, but I'm antsy. I'm nervous to get this car making some good power. And I hope you guys join me for that. That should be coming up tomorrow. So if you'd like to contact me, you can do so at The Real Tavarish. That's Instagram and Twitter. Facebook.com/AskTavarish and AskTavarish@gmail.com is my email. I read every single email you guys have. I love talking to you guys and answering you and getting your advice on, especially on projects like this. So until next time, this is me telling you that on cars like this that are about to make some noise, you guys need to wrench every day.